Hey everybody, welcome back to Libertarians Who Make Art. I'm your host, David Lilley, aka Pardon Will. And tonight I have a fantastic guest. But before we get started, I want to remind you to go and hit that like and subscribe. Share this with your friends, do all that stuff that people do on the internets. Spread the word. We like to help artists out, and we also like to provide you with other artists that you may not even know about. But this guest tonight, you may have heard of him. He's been around. He's part of the Libertarian Party in Connecticut. He's a muralist. He's a portrait painter, artist savant, and of course, he is a libertarian who makes art. Tonight, my guest is Alex Ranniello. Ranniello, did I do that right?
Ranniello, pretty close.
Ranniello, I botched it. Ranniello.
All good.
Alex Ranniello. My first question is, man, how'd you get that last name? No, I'm just playing.
It was collateral damage getting off the boat in Ellis Island.
It really messed that up. No, I'm just playing. How are you tonight? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. So when I always have artists on, I always like to chit chat about how they got started. And it's normally somewhat similar. Like artists are normally start off like I drew as a kid or I got that, but sometimes every once in a while you get something like wild. Like I didn't start painting till I was in my 20s, early 20s. What was the thing for you? Did you grow up just being an artist, or how'd that work out?
Yeah, so I mean, it's always run in the family. My mother was a photographer. My father was a jazz drummer for about 40 years. My sister was a sculptor, still is. Shout out to her. But yeah, so I was in a horrific bike accident junior year of high school. I was a kind of like a jock, but always kind of tethered to my creative side at a distance. What happened was I went through a rehabilitation process and really dedicated my last 18 months of school in high school to art, to creating, just putting things out in the ether, rehabilitating myself. And it really took a life of its own. I kind of embraced it. It was the only thing I was really good at. So I had a perfect kind of little setup with the University of Hartford. It was local. It was affordable for myself and my family. So I went there and really developed my skills. And 4 years later, in 2017, I had a double major in painting and drawing, and with kind of some experience in ceramics and as a potter, as well as art history, and kind of really came out well-rounded. I kind of set sights from there. I definitely struggled a little bit when I first got out. Didn't really have the directive from a professional standpoint. So I went back into the school system, got a master's in advertising and marketing, and really just tried to make a go of it as a business. And from there on, I really spread my seed locally in kind of like the artist scene here in Connecticut, especially, in New Britain, in Windsor, Hartford, any, little town here and there, really, made my name locally and got, in the right audiences, volunteering my time and putting in those hours and meeting the right people. So.
Very cool. When you said you went back for advertising and marketing, and so I'm going to jump right into the weeds because this is something when I talk to artists, even local ones, phenomenal artists, awful salesmen, and I can say this about myself as well. Was that a thing that you ran into, and then you were like, I'm going to go for advertising, and did it help? Tell me about this, because this is like the crux of every artist. It's the thing that's the most difficult.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of have like a little bit of like what kind of Brian McWilliams has going on. He's like this ADHD or super brain, but he's not willing to kind of sell his soul with the advertising PR front. So yeah, he goes and leans into the libertarianism. I for me, it kind of felt like very quickly into the program, I realized that I was going to be selling my soul for a corporate job, selling pharma ads at some dead end job very quickly. So I really tried to, make, a quick turn of it and embrace kind of the more creative aspect of advertising and marketing and kind of blend, some of that imagery into the actual artwork. So what you'll find is that as my work has progressed over the years, it's kind of become more italicized, iconographic. It's kind of resembled some of those advertising posters that you would see like in propaganda pieces, but more for like the non-interventionist kind of crowd.
Oh my gosh, dude, this is going to lead me right into there's so much I want to talk about. Let's just go from one to I have more questions about that, but now that you brought that up, I also love having this conversation. So there's this Breitbart saying, politics is downstream from culture. And I
Yep.
have a belief that art is upstream from culture. So really art, culture, politics. And so we don't, as far as when I say we, there are no real libertarians. Let's just go and put that one out there.
Mhm.
But people in the Libertarian Party, the libertarians that will are the real ones, which there aren't any. Um, not a lot of artist community. That's one of the things why I love about libertarians who make art. There's not like a big pronouncing like this is libertarian art, which is really there's like a gold mine to be mined out there.
Yeah.
Just like liberty, freedom, artwork. So it's great that you said that. Is that something that you were like, no, this is something like this is right up your alley? Like this is because not many people when they say they're artists talk about propaganda, but
Mhm.
propaganda is like a really honed in art skill.
Yeah.
Um, what's your thoughts on that one? Do you think this has anything to do with politics when it comes to art? Or do you think people look right past that when they look at propaganda pieces?
Um, yeah, I don't think people like outright, put pen to pad thinking that they're going to create, an illustrious piece of propaganda. I think they come in with their predisposition. They have their values, their cultural set of kind of norms and rules and internal regulation that they come to any project with, and then they're going to inject that into the work. When I look back at some of the work I made, particularly during COVID,
Yeah.
during the lockdowns, I was just kind of expressing myself, just kind of vomiting on the canvas. It was like, just get the work out, explain later, and use it as kind of your only voice, your vehicle, for this work. So that was really that was a formidable moment, going through the lockdowns. Obviously it red pilled a lot of people, woke a lot of people up that would have never even had these open discussions about any foreign policy or economic policy or anything going on with in terms of medical freedom and things like that. So a lot of the work, kind of has an injection, no pun intended, into the, of libertarian values. And that's something I talk about in the Canvas Rebel interview too. Recently, there was a little bit of that, which I can, link below afterward. But
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
yeah, I think that, I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
It does. I honestly I formed that question horribly. But
No, it was good. It's an
I think
important
I
question.
think yeah, I think one of the things that always pulls at my strings or tugs my chain, whatever that saying um, is
Grind
I
your gears.
mean, yeah, grinds my gears. Is when I sit down with libertarians or I watch them online or I chat with them, it's always like, have you read this book or what's this policy or how's this work? And rarely do they ever be like, hey, did you see that movie that had like
Mhm.
or did you hear that music that this is like the art forms? They're very what I like to call type A engineers. I mean,
Mhm.
we always said they're very autistic, which they are that too. But they fall in that category of just being like, book, have you read this book? Have you done this policy? Very mechanical
Mhm.
is the best way to put it. And so when I stumble upon a libertarian artist, I'm always very intrigued with like, how did you end up here? Like that's where I normally get because there's not a lot of room for. I'm not saying there isn't room. There's plenty of room in the libertarian movement, but there's just not that many. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So that's why I always love talking to libertarians who make art because they're just a different breed. And like what you just said, like how did other than like shouting online, how do other libertarians get through the lockdowns? Because I know mine was making art.
Yeah, they do public demonstrations, they do live art pieces, they meme. There's certain
Meme.
there's certain modern ways and adaptations. But we know, looking back at the history books and a lot of some of the recent papers and that have been exposed during the beginning of this administration, is like there have been longstanding black budgets in Hollywood, for CIA and propaganda, to be run through, for predictive programming purposes. So we know this exists. And I
Yeah.
always, from a local level here in Connecticut, obviously we're kind of in a deep blue corner of the country. Are always going to be fighting people in opposition. You're going to have no friends here, basically, on a political
Mhm.
standpoint. But the reality is that the opposite of globalism is fighting with localism. And if you can convince the neighbors to the right and to the left of you, figuratively and literally, you're going to have a far better chance of getting your message spread across, at a local level, whether it's, exhibiting or, doing, stand up or doing a podcast or doing, written poetry. Those are the conventions. And particularly with the gallery work, which is really my biggest passion, that is kind of, set on a chart charted for a course forward now is that, being the artistic director for a free gallery here in East Hartford, Connecticut, I can kind of bring some of my values, on a free speech first principle level to the art scene here, and really spread that open invite to everybody of all thought and walks of life here in Connecticut.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I had a gallery for a little bit up here in Albany, New York,
Nice.
and, I would do interviews like this with artists all the time, and so since I'm in a deep blue area as well,
Hmm.
every I would run with the artist community, but, all, like, Democrat socialists,
Hmm.
and I would talk to them a little bit about their ideas, and one of they would come into the gallery and be like, "Yeah, yeah, this is what I believe in." I was like, "You realize, like, your entire political basis, I wouldn't even exist." I mean, they would I was like, "You want government-funded art galleries?" And it would just mind blow 'em, and then I had a few of them. I'm telling a little secrets, I won't give any names, but a few of them been like, "Yeah, like, I like capitalism, but it just doesn't flow well in the community." I was like, "No, I totally get it, but, I need to make some money to keep this thing open." It did stay open,
Yeah,
but yeah, I always found that difficult. I actually had a conversation with Larry Sharp, who ran for governor up here, libertarian who ran for
I
governor.
love Larry. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I love Larry. And one of the entire episode, I was like, "Hey, man, what's the deal with like artists not being it makes like in my spectrum, like if you're an artist, I was like, how are you not libertarians? Like pushing
Right.
the boundaries, like always trying to move and innovate in new different ways and having the freedom to express like freedom to express yourself. Come on, like
Yeah.
this makes
Yeah.
sense."
Yep.
And we talked about that, and it always blew my mind that I was like, why? And I think it's just I think it's propaganda,
Hmm.
like the majority of it, and we've been surrounded by political propaganda, and none of it's liberty based, and so I think that's where we come in, uh,
Hmm.
and so that's why I think this is super important. Do you see a future in the libertarian movement for more creatives and and in that realm?
I sure hope so. I mean, the content seems to write itself. You
Yeah,
can
for
really
real.
do, a long narrative. But, the problem that I've found, just extended beyond just the Mises Caucus itself, particularly with the LP. But I think, like the creative outlets that we have, it's kind of the same problems I saw in art school, which is you really have to have a triad of qualities. You have to have the small business acumen, you have to have the social connective tissue with your community, and then, locally, regionally, whatever the case may be. And then you got to have the mechanics. And I find that a lot of people in this space, they have one of three. They don't have all three. That's something I'm really mindful of, that I really try to work on. Particularly when I want to be a hermit for 72 hours and just, do shrooms and paint in my studio with my cats. But the reality is too, you have to have that FaceTime with the community and get out and to go to shows, even if you don't have a vested interest in going. You may strike up a conversation. You may, inadvertently kind of convert some of your ideas, going into a conversation about a piece there, or you may just make a connection with people that you've kind of slowly drifted away from. So I think that if we kind of hone the tools that we have at our disposal properly, and we find a way to, get out there, so to speak, I think if you meet people where they are, I think there's no reason that our ideas can't proliferate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think one of the things like you don't find an artist like what you just said, hermit, like which is kind of a bad I understand like the catch 22 or the double negative of being an artist and a libertarian because libertarians are automatically isolationists already. And then add artists on top of that, and you're like, well, you never leave the house. Which kind of makes sense, but I think the triad that you just brought up is extremely important. I think every artist struggles with managing those three and keeping them in an equal hierarchy, because you really have to put as much time into each one. Because you can be a phenomenal painter, but if you never get out, especially locally, what good does it do? And if you can't, if you really can't communicate your art piece in a social setting or like on a podcast or something like that, it doesn't it kind of taints the artwork itself. So it's a bit of a conundrum for a lot of artists. But one of the things that I always like to try to tell. So when I had a gallery, I would try to encourage artists to get out and talk more. And because I'm so used to having conversations, like spent so much time in the social, I really had to uplift that part of them. So we would do gallery shows. It would be their show,
Mhm.
and they would be very quiet and submit, and I'd have to go over there and just try to talk to people about their own art and try to encourage them. But one of the things that I think they missed out on was something you brought up a little while ago. There's this aspect of being a well-rounded artist that you don't see that often. And what I mean by that is everything that you do, whether it's your day job or whether it's this, is you have to start looking at it as playing a role in your art form as well.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm talking? Can you speak about that? Because it seems like you're well. I mean, not only are you well rounded, you seem to be pretty versed in something that I struggle with as well, of being like I'm writing or
Mhm.
blogging or doing all of the creative things that I do, trying to
Yeah.
make them utilize them each other and grow in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like bringing, nuanced experiences from past, roles and positions into a
Yeah.
new venture. Yeah, I think it's important to be, um, mindful of, like, delineating your spaces for, having, like, wearing the proper hat for that set and task and goal. And then just bringing the wisdom of your past experiences, with certain things. Like, I may be working on a mural that's in a compromised location, bad part of town, or something like that. And I may be purposely bringing on, I may pay out of pocket, in an overall budget, to bring in, 4 or 5 extra sets of hands, younger artists that are hungry and want to get after it, and talk to them as I'm working, and not only kill two birds with one stone, get the job done faster, make it more of a communal impact, and have that one-on-one time with the youth to kind of, get those ideas and exchanges out there, and then give them the confidence to kind of continue that conversation, so they
Yeah.
can kind of be the brain children of what you're trying to affect in terms of the high vibrational energy you bring to a project. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of answers your question, I think.
Yeah, no, it did. Again, terrible question. But
No, it was a very good question.
I've just wrapped my head around those things a lot because even as an artist, I do a lot of different. I have a lot of different spinning plates, and
Hmm.
sometimes I know a lot of artists do that, but sometimes they compartmentalize them. Like, well, I'm an artist here on this day, and then I'll go to work on this day, and then I'll go, I'll write something over here for a fun project. And what I try to explain to them a lot of times, especially when I had the gallery, is start to lean into those, into other, like, take your writing skills, your ability
Hmm.
to paint, and put that into your writing. Like, start to try to blend all these together. And then when you have conversations like what, like podcasting itself is an art form.
Yep.
Um, does it help with me painting a picture? Probably not, but it definitely helps with my ability to talk to people who are interested in buying a piece,
And
and
talk
that
about your work.
and talk about that's another thing that
Hmm.
goes back to what I was talking about. Like, you might be a phenomenal painter, but if you can't talk about your work, it's not good. It
Yep.
hurts your art.
Yep.
There's a lot of, I mean, the artwork is a reflection of the artist in itself. So a
Hmm.
lot of people will buy, art because they know the artist and they know who's behind it. Um,
What I found too nowadays too, and this could be just, recency bias with the proliferation of the AI artwork too. You see it with certain shows, particularly, like, with, certain podcasts and certain exhibits. But, like, there's too much polish to the crop of artists currently, and I feel like the kind of gateway into a longer dialogue with the viewer and their experience to you, is that, leave that window for question, leave, like, things, blemished or unfinished, and give them that kind of, that grandiose kind of, um, I don't know, bewilderment to kind of dig in there. They say that you only spend about 8 seconds in front of a piece of artwork, and,
yeah,
turn it into 16, turn it into 32. That's kind of what the role of a libertarian as an artist is to do, is not just, conceal, your ideas and values and imbue that in the work, but also make it a nuanced way where you're stopping the viewer in his tracks.
I love that. That's genius. I love that. I mean, I don't think about that often, but even having something like a small blemish, I mean, it's handmade. And so
Yep.
what we're losing nowadays with AI art, I mean, AI art has its blemishes, but it won't last for long. And
Mm-mm.
so to find something that is like, well, this kind of is oddly shaped in this particular piece of art is something that is something to actually pay attention to now. You're like, oh, hey,
Mhm.
it's almost, I mean, again, this sounds esoteric, but it's a reflection of the human soul. Our souls aren't AI generated. There's flaws. And so to have that is a great way to communicate, like, an actual handmade piece of artwork. Um,
Certainly.
and, and turning that 16 seconds into, 32 more seconds, or 64. A lot of people don't often think about that, but that does getting someone to stop in front of your artwork for an extended period of time does a world of difference because we're in a fast-paced society where people flip through their phones. I mean, I sound like a boomer, um,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
is true. And so to
Yeah.
captivate that just by even just a blemish, um, is great advice for any artist out there. I mess up my artwork, but not on purpose. Just that's just me being bad. Just me being
Latency. That's what we do. I
yeah,
had the same
exactly.
problem. I had the same
When
problem.
when you started off, like when I started off, I focused specifically on local, and I haven't had that many conversations with younger artists out of college. I was an outside artist, so I
Mhm.
didn't go to school for it. But I always talked to people who did, and I would always ask them like, what really I was getting advice from them. I was like, I need some free education here. Um, and then when I talked to them, their expectations of coming out of art school while they were in school, their expectations of what they could do as an artist were pretty much diminished while being in school. Um, it wasn't like a walkway easily into like galleries in the city or
Mhm.
anything like that.
Yep.
And people forget the importance of doing local. What do you brought up that you started local? Um, how did you what was your first local thing? Like how did you get into that? Because that's kind of difficult.
Yeah, especially in a small market, in a subset of a small market like Hartford too. There's not a lot of opportunity to the naked eye. I burrowed myself in New Britain first. My first opportunity outside of art school, graduating in 2017, was getting into the New Britain Stockman Gallery. So it was kind of like this little janky co-op space. It really needed a little work. It needed some love. I was kind of under the tutelage of this community leader named Stephen Hart, and he was great, just kind of molding me to kind of what to expect with gallery work. And then from there, I regained some of the contacts that I would have, eventually accrued, but I got them very early on. So I got,
Nice.
local community leaders. I got people that pull the purse strings for making projects happen, who have a great reputation and a long-standing reputation with the city. And then I kind of networked out from that flow. I started working at my hometown's Academy for the Arts in the summertime, just working on workshops and working underneath other teachers, and all along that time frame. Before, this is even before I went back to grad school in 2021 or 2020, was I was continuing to keep making work, letting my environment influence the work, and just kind of picking up experiences. But in terms of going back to what you kind of talked about with the art school experience and being an outsider, for contraposed to what I went through, I could say definitively, going to a top 15 program in the country, it is not what I expected at all. I
Right.
was kind of a little underwhelmed by the time I left. I really didn't feel like I got the professional quality of care when it came to preparing myself for the real world outside of art school. I mean, that's so stereotypical of any program, any private, liberal arts college. You're going
Yeah.
to hear it all the time. But I think, furthermost, what I've seen is that a lot of people I left, school with, the 105 people I graduated with, I think maybe 10 are still creating work, still
Wow.
engaged in the community, doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, you get beaten down by bills and real world stuff, and you just don't adapt well. I added mural work to my repertoire around 2018. That's something that kind of came after the beginning of gallery work that I got into in New Britain. And I just continue to keep expanding and just trying new things and meeting new people. But the reason I lament, my frustrations with the art school was not just, the exorbitant price tag that luckily I was able to kind of undercurve under that. Um, I just felt that a lot of people were not, um, they were not taking full advantage of the opportunities in front of them, outside of school. So it's kind of like when
Yeah.
you go to a public school when you're in high school, it's like they're kind of fast tracking you to go to college. There's really they don't even enter into the discussion, into the chat about, 2 year, doing trades and, and training under people and running your own business. Those discussions don't even enter the chat, the
Yeah.
conversation. And I think a lot of the same problem carries over into secondary education, all the way up to undergrad and grad school. It's like there's just no real tether to the outside world. It just seems like, this kind of this life cycle of academia for life. And I think a lot of art schools have the same problem. They don't, because otherwise you'd be teaching.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, no, I agree. When I started doing art, the first place I had to show was in a coffee shop. And it was the only avenue I could think of. I was like, and I just walked in and I was like, "Hey, you're," and it was a local, it was a small town. I was
Hmm.
like, your coffee shop doesn't have anything in it." I was like, I make art. Would you let me do a show?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, absolutely." And that was the start of not only just being an artist, because I had no other avenue. It was again, it was a small town, so I was like, I have to create this space because who's gonna tell me, like, there's no gallery here.
Yep.
I mean, when I say small town. And so I just kind of created that space, and then from there, I had a few other friends who were artists. I was like, "Well, I just did this coffee. You want me to talk to them?" And then eventually just started creating shows and would do
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I just it's those small little, like, it's a coffee shop. No one, 6 people saw my artwork in a week. Like that was
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had to kind of just swallow that and be like, "That's small beginnings." But I I I think I was able to do that because I was an outside artist. Do you think artists going to school, do you think it's one of the things that stops them in their tracks is if they don't get into the gallery, then they have to start small, even though they have the giant bill? Do you think that's an issue, or do you think is that I don't know. I don't know what happens when kids come out of school.
Yeah, there's kind of like a preferred kind of mental tenure track that students go into. You get your portfolio review out of high school. You either have things to work on, or you kind of get some positive affirmation from there. You kind of go in with a preconceived idea of what you want to go into. I want to go into multimedia. I want to go into film. I want to go into 3D work, sculpture, ceramics. I want to go into painting and drawing. I want to be, a restorationist, or I may want to go into art history. I may want to be a docent. I would go on the same track, photography, whatever the case may be. So there's going to be an avenue and a vehicle for whatever you're trying to accomplish. But
Yeah.
I think artists that go into the art school pipeline, they kind of have an inverse approach to how they approach art. They're not thinking thematically. They're not thinking real world experiences, first principle values. They're not thinking about creating a demand like you did
Yeah.
with a free market opportunity. It's like there's an open wall in a coffee shop. I can beautify it. It's a win-win. You're already exchanging goods and
That's
services
yeah.
without any interference from the school's, involvement. So it's none of that stuff really enters the conversation with the art school environment. Yeah, it's very narrow. I know there's a school pipeline to Torrington here that I have kind of a love-hate tenuous relationship with, because they literally carve out a space against free market demands for having a pipeline so that
Oh,
artists can rent a space, but
oh
it's
man.
completely isolated from the rest of the state. And
Yeah.
so they're in there making art in this like little cubby container, and then they're downstairs, submitting their work, but it's just a life cycle that only goes about 20 feet, and they're all doing it at the expense of being out in the real world, and having more important experiences that may create better work, create better relationships, bring to newer, better heights. And I think that art school is kind of it's definitely an impediment for that. Now, it's not all bad. I mean, you meet a lot of great professors. You meet a lot of there's some students you could tell are really driven and are really going big places. But I've never been a city guy, so I've made it very clear from like kind of day one that I was going to stay in a secondary city, a Hartford
Mhm.
sized city. So that's just something I kind of made a decision about.
Yeah, actually, that secondary city thing, that's normally where I've always been.
Hmm.
It's I can't say always, but there's some even even when I lived in San Antonio, um, which is not I mean, you could, if you're in San Antonio, you definitely feel like a secondary city to Austin. But
Yeah.
in compared to Albany, New York, it's not a secondary city. But
Yeah.
even then, it took me only a few tries to find the artist community there.
Hmm.
And there were so whereas in intimidating, these a lot of them have been doing it for a long time. But they would I don't even remember. I think I went to one art show and I just talked to them and I was like, "Hey, this is what I do. Do when's the next one? Do you guys have any openings?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." And so it was the one thing that I guess I don't know if everyone knows this, but I didn't know that I could just approach artists and be like, "Hey, I do what you do. Can I come next time?" And they're like, "Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely." Again, that was an like outside artist. There was no. hierarchy of academia to be like, oh, not quite yet. So
Hmm.
I don't know that world that much. I only know I only know the streets.
Well,
So
just
like pretty cool.
before you continue, just to interject,
Yeah,
it's just like any other industry. It's hyper overly credentialized. So
yeah.
it's how many national accredited shows have you been in? How many jury, how many jurors have you done? All this bullshit. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. That's exactly okay. That's what I thought. Look, that's what I thought, but I try not to bash academia too. But I am a libertarian, and it's all awful. So
Fast away.
I have to try to ease up on that because I know a lot of artists, and I feel bad sometimes. Where I should feel bad for me because I didn't go to school and I didn't even know where to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
credentialed. But yeah, it's the same thing with any kind of institution that I look at. I'm like, I, I don't, I don't understand it. And then I also, it seems kind of deadening inside. Actually, that's the next thing I want to ask you. Because there's this cliche that all the best music is sad music, but your art, we actually haven't talked about your artwork. Your artwork, and anybody can go to Instagram right now and take a look at it. Your artwork is abnormally fun. You have a good time. And so, and I think that's great because a lot of artists always like lean into like the macabre. I mean, not all
Yeah.
artists, but a lot of my friends lean into the macabre. And rarely do I come across an artist who just seems like they're having a blast. Tell me
Hmm.
about that. Tell me like where that could also, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of your artwork feels warm, like the temperature's warm, palm trees, sunny.
Yeah.
And it's not like that in Connecticut very often. And so tell me where this thing comes from, this warm,
Sure.
having a blast thing.
Yeah, the brainchild itself just comes from an affinity from California from an early age. Everybody asks me a million times a day, "Are you from there? Are you from there?" No, I'm not from there. I grew up with, Kobe and Shaq. I grew up with those great Raider teams, at the turn of the, with the Gruden teams. I grew up with the Dodgers. So it's just a weird, like, contrarian position to be in here on the East
Yeah,
Coast, loving California. I know it's a lib shithole. I'm fully aware. It's got some of the fakest people, but it's got the most majestic, beautiful weather I've ever seen in my
yeah,
life. And there's a lot of inspiration to derive. I mean, it's got such a rich cultural history in terms of the music and the art that's been through there. Some of my favorite painters of all time have come through there. All that being said, yeah. So my work is very the opposite of it's very non-macabre,
yeah,
as you would put it. I think it's some of the it's just the influences I have. It's not just the artists that I love. I mean, I grew up being a huge Matisse fan, a big Richard Diebenkorn fan, a big David Hockney fan. All the bright, beautiful colors
yeah,
that resemble the West Coast. But when you tie in some of the the libertarian philosophy, and then, like, some of the first principles that really influence the work. I kind of take the what I call the Tripoli approach. It's like people aren't gonna, like, take you seriously. They're not going to take your words for honesty until you kind of play this rope a dope. So you have to gain their trust, and you have to have that dance, that conversation with them,
yeah,
where then they can feel comfortable to kind of let their guard down, and then suck you into their world, and then they can kind of be open to your ideas. And
yeah,
so then the paintings become a fertile breeding ground to display those ideas. It may be a keyword, it may be a full sentence, it may be iconography that's imbued within the paintings. But if it's something beautiful and it's nuanced, it's killing multiple birds with one stone, because it's making the world a more pretty place to live in. It's bringing cultural artifact to a place there wasn't one, and it's also spreading the values that we share, as libertarians. So it's doing a lot of things at once, and it's opening the dialogue when viewers visit the work and leave to go to another place with something to think about, for the next thing that they encounter.
yeah. That's a great concept. There's this theologian, dude. I think it's J.K. Chesterton, and he
I
talks
love chess.
about you love Chesterton. So
Yeah.
I may have this quote wrong. Actually, it's not a quote. I'm just going to paraphrase. But he talks about sharing the gospel, and he says, "Doctrine knocks on the front door of the church, while as in um, art shines the gospel through stained glass windows."
Hmm.
And I always thought about that, but like, and it kind of reflects big on the libertarian movement. Like, having if you ever watch a libertarian have a conversation with like a normie,
Hmm.
it ends very quickly.
It
Um,
sure does.
and so that's why I absolutely have an affinity for libertarians who make art, because I'm like, there's a
Hmm.
key here that is always overlooked, and it's exactly what you talked about, like something that nuance, that beauty, the
Hmm.
conversations built into the piece,
Hmm.
and it's the rope a dope. It's kind of just it's shining through a stained glass window where people are like, hey, that is awesome. And you go,
Hmm.
okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about where this came from or what the
Hmm.
idea was behind this. And then all of a sudden,
Yep.
instead of sounding like you're, reading passages from Mises,
Right.
you're sharing an art that they already connect with, because look,
Yes.
beauty is transcendental. Like, it's not,
Yes.
people know what good art is. They might not understand, Austrian School of Economics, but they
Hmm.
know what a painting is a good painting. And so
Hmm.
I love that concept of it. Man. I love it.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
do you this is another question I definitely want to get your opinion on. Have you so I've hit every once in a while, it doesn't happen often, but every once in a while I'll hit an artist block. Have you ever experienced artist block where you just sit down in front of a canvas and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here?
I have encountered artist box numerously. I don't sit in front of a canvas though. I usually get up and walk around or go to the beach or listen to something.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. That's how you
Yeah.
so that was my question. Like, how do you get out of it?
Yeah, so my curative features typically, I try to get the blood flowing. I try to get, some kind of activity going. Typically I'll go to a body of water, I'll go to the beach. um, you know uh, People always ask me too, because I'm such a big shroom head. They're like, well, do you find inspiration when you do that? I'm like, no, honestly, like I take them as the vehicle to get the painting done,
Oh
because that
wow.
gets me because it gets me in a perfect flow state, especially with
Yeah.
the right dosage. But that could be off the record if you want.
No, that's fine. We'll leave it there.
I'm sure the audience will find good humor in that. But yeah, no, I mean, I have to go away from the work if I feel in a block. So I have to pick up a book. I have to listen to a podcast. I have to get out and touch grass. I have to spend time with, friends and family, because honestly, like if I feel like the work's getting off the rails or it's losing its original brainchild, I have to go back to why I created the work in the first place. So I have to go talk to people that, and just get the temperature of things.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it can be, I mean, it sounds, which is something I think all artists should do, is not belabor the point. Like, not beat a piece. I've done this before where I've hit a block and I just beat the art piece into the ground, and
Yeah,
eventually it was like I got to start over.
we've all done
Whereas,
that.
yeah, I don't know why I don't know why that is. I mean, sometimes you just get so married to it that you're like, this is, I
Yeah.
gotta do something with this. Whereas, and like what you just said, like you stopped and then you went and participated in another form of art, whether it was like outside beauty or listen to a podcast or film.
Yep.
Um, and I don't know if it's just a masochistic way of just being like, I will finish this the way it is, and then you end up just ruining it. And that walk away from an art piece is a trope, like where you get stuck and when you leave and then you come back, you see it totally different. But it's absolutely true. Like, it's just a normal artist thing. And
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think maybe it's just from once you stare at a piece for so long, you start to like, you're in
Well,
it and everything feels weird.
we live in a culture where like it's like the microwave society. It's like everything needs to be done in 10 minutes or less, or whatever
Yeah.
the case may be. So we need a polished look. We need something Instagrammable. We need something that's, you know, ready made, as like Duchamp used to call it, the ready mades.
Yeah.
So I think that there's just like that intuition with like the human spirit that's going to transcend art. It's going to be something else. Like, oh, I have to finish this book now. I have to finish this painting now. There's never like left up to mystery that things could be nonlinear. You can come
Mhm.
back to things in a circular fashion, because you're going to come back with a completely new set of experiences to something that you may have been stuck about.
Yeah. Do you so any artists coming up? I do want to get your ideas on this, because this is something I do struggle with. I have my own ideas about it or not. Especially with the AI and the tech coming up.
Hmm.
Whereas I I feel for artists, like young artists, it's probably my I don't mind artists using AI as a tool. Like, I've had that
Hmm.
conversation. But the thing that worries me about AI is specifically young artists. And the despair it must feel if you haven't even gotten started, and all of a sudden now you can just type in to like a chat GPT or whatever, and it'll pop out art. What do you do you think there's a future this basically do you think there's a future for young artists out there?
Oh, absolutely. Because
Okay.
there's always going to be the void of the contrarian position, the disruptor. That's always going to be an archetype.
Mm,
That's an open space that AI just can't do. They
that's
don't have
true.
they don't have a soul. They don't have I'm saying they like they have pronouns.
Yeah, they do.
AI,
So,
yeah, AI as an entity will just, it's going to be absorbed into the mass culture as another tool. I use it. I know a lot of other artists
yeah.
that use it to their capacity. But yeah, the point being is, and that's another thing about staying tethered to the culture and getting out in your community is I do a lot of, sporadic kind of mentorship roles with people around me. So, like I said, whether it's hiring, out of pocket for a couple sets of hands that go to the local community college that are in their art program and want to get involved in murals, I'll bring them on. Because I want to talk to them too. It's a dual feedback. There's a symbiotic relationship going on. It's kind of like when these Fortune 500 companies do focus groups, bringing in children because they're going
Yeah.
to give the raw truth about whatever they're pitching or whatever shit they're selling.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's kind of the same dualistic kind of feature with working with younger artists, and they humble you. They bring you back to kind of like the original magic as why you started creating in the first place. But all that tangent aside, I'm just trying to remember your original question because I had a spot where I was going there.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
just that I feel for the youth growing up because
oh yeah.
if AI was a thing when I was a kid, I
Hmm.
worry that would I have even been an artist if I just looked at him and like, "Oh, it's that easy. What's the point?" Like,
Sure, sure. Yeah, well, I mean, there's always going to be the space to, create work that just can't be, just simply mechanically from that standpoint can't be created or recreated from AI. But I think the most important thing that like kind of transcends all of our conversation is that there's always going to be that nuanced place, for the contrarian, the person to be the disruptor. I think that's like the most critical thing because it can look like so many different things to us, so we just don't know what it's going to manifest as. But we need those speakers and those voices, and those are the people, the artistic open brains that you're going to want to try to cultivate and bring into your orbit to kind of align yourself with. So I try to always plant that in the young people that I meet too, whether they're explicitly tracked to be artists or they're just kind of creative people and they don't know where they're going yet. That's something I try to really just put, because I mean, look, there's so much despair with young people, and every generation has their thing to be upset about. It's not all doom and gloom, and I think that my work kind of brings it back to that point. I think uplifting and giving those younger people hope where there may not be any, is giving them that opportunity. Like, hey, you could be that disruptor. You could be different from the rest of your group and not have to cut off your genitals to do it.
yeah, yeah, right? Yeah. There's other ways of being artistic,
There's other ways to be a
like
disruptor.
having an actual personality. Like that helps too
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I love that, and I tried to like when the AI thing came out, I tried to relate it to like back in the 80s and the 90s there was this big like it was an onslaught of prefabricated furniture. But there was always like that flea market off to the side that was bespoke, handmade. Now, it didn't sell as many as like the ones you could buy at like Sam's Club or Walmart, but there's still a marketplace for that, and it was still like a pretty decent marketplace. Like you've got
Mhm,
the, I mean, you live in Connecticut. There's tons of yuppies out there that love handmade furniture. Same when it goes to art. So I always try to remind
mhm,
younger artists, being like, hey, there will always be that desire of being like, oh, you mean someone actually painted this? It just means it's going to be worth more. Um, but it might also drown out the people who are not as. I think the cost is going to be you're going to have to be very passionate about art. I think is
mhm.
what it really comes down to. Whereas in like you said in your school, where it was 105 artists and only 10 of them are still doing it. That
If
10,
that,
it's gonna weed them out real fast, especially if you can just type into Grok, you know.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that there's going to be two types of people, and we already see this kind of playing out with people in our libertarian sphere. Is like, there's people that are going to be blue pill, that are just going to shut their brain off, take the chip, take the next vaccine, take all this bullshit taken from on high,
Yeah,
and there's going to people that are going to be more agrarian. They're going to be more, tied to their community, have good spirituality, be tethered to nature, read, stay clean, clean their water, clean their food. There's going to be two types of people moving forward, and I think that there's a rare opportunity right now for artists to get on that bandwagon and carve their space, and I
yeah.
think that's like the most critical thing.
I agree too. And to be honest, I think there shouldn't be, like, in my head I always think like, I need to tell artists about libertarianism because it makes sense that they would be libertarian. But now the more I think about it, I'm like, I need to tell libertarians they need to be artists. They need to work at their art. Like
Yeah,
that actually makes more sense to convert more libertarians into artists than artists into libertarians.
yeah.
Um, that's kind of, I guess that's kind of, this is why I struggle with the concept of why there's not as many libertarians who make art. To kind of tie the whole thing in, is because to me it seems like it's like the perfect mixture of like a libertarian artist. It all coincides, like exactly what we're talking about.
Hmm.
Um, just makes a ton of sense. Do you see so in our political climate, I don't know when this is going to be dropping, so we're going to keep it as vague as possible because current events aren't going to work out. Do you see any hope for the libertarian? I'm not hope. That sounded black pilled right there.
Hopium.
Hope. Where do you see the Libertarian Party going? Do you see it? Do you see it? Do you see it making any changes? Do you see it moving more right, more left, more centered? What do you think?
Um, Man, God, I feel like I'm on Michael Malice's show now. Like, what?
Good. That's exactly what I was going for.
I
Hey,
knew you were
Alex,
gonna
what
go
was your
there.
favorite part of this interview?
Yeah. I won't give you the black pilled CIA Curtis Yarvin answer either.
No, appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. So from a national vantage point, I don't see a bright future for the party, but I do see a lot of opportunity at the state level, and I think that's always been the case. I think it's going to
Always.
continue to be the case. Yeah. So I love what they're doing in Colorado. Obviously, New Hampshire, they're doing a tremendous job. Um, I think there's a real opportunity, in the tri-state area here. I don't know explicitly if it's Connecticut, could be New Jersey, it could be, somewhere else. I know Dave and Robbie are here in this area, which is
Oh,
huge.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they're just across the pond, basically. So there, that tide is being felt. That's for sure. I
Yeah.
think it's just all you can do is, just take every, waking day to kind of wake as many people up that are willing to be receptive to it. And I think the best way is kind of what we detailed in this conversation, which is using the art as that vehicle. But yeah, I think that there's tremendous opportunity at the local level, whether it's in your town or your region or your state. But national, it's going to be really hard because I think that the party is just so widespread. There's so many still fighting over like all these bullshit consent laws and ballot access, when ballot access is a legitimate, of
Yeah.
course, but yeah, at the same time, we're still completely asleep during the entirety of the 4 years of lockdowns. So it's like there's a hierarchy to the precedents set with the problems that we have, and I just think that certain people just drop the ball. And with that being said, I think like, just being as, it all goes back to being as, readily community, oriented and active as you possibly can, because the only solution to, these global depopulation is localism. So just love
Yeah.
your neighbor.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think that goes for artists and libertarians, even if you're a libertarian and you're not an artist.
Mhm.
Going local is kind of, it's not even a means to the end of national. It's a means to the end of being local, because
Yep.
truthfully, even I guess you can even look at like national politics as a bit like an AI game. It's commercial. It's always
Mhm.
going to be commercial, and it's always going to be regurgitated and not propagate cookie cutter. Like it's always going to follow the culture. But when you stay local, you're normally ahead of the game anyway. So that's where all the greatest art movements started, was in somewhere small. It didn't. No great art movement came out of a McDonald's ad.
Yep.
Not that I know of. Maybe it did. I don't know. No great art movement came out of a Campbell's soup. Like that's just yeah. So I think that's a great
Yeah.
advice for anybody, even artist, old, young, myself included. I've got an art a whole piece I'm doing here for locally for up here in Albany, just because I loved. All right, man. I'll let's end it on this. I want to get your thoughts on this, and this is going to be one of those questions.
Before
Oh yeah, no, what you got? You got?
before you launch, I just wanted to dovetail my previous answer
Yeah.
because I love the feedback you gave too. I think another opportunity that's a really great space for libertarian leaning artists, or however you want to identify that person, would be kind of in the satire space,
Oh
because I
yeah.
feel and I think that's something completely undertapped, undervalued. That can really be pushed and promoted at a higher level. And it doesn't matter what your instrument of means to getting from A to B is, but I think whether it's, like local protests, or, just, kind of taking the Alex Stein route, or you can kind of go more the satire through, like the Edward Crumb type of like periodical image making, kind of like
Yeah.
going into the visuals. I think is a huge place to be, and that's something that I learned, kind of making a joke of the entirety of like advertising and marketing when I left. It's like it's a soulless venture. I think it's something that Top Lobster kind of alluded to on Nephilim Death Squad frequently, is like he kind of came from the same world as me. He kind of had the same starting roots as I did, now to this point. So it's funny, that he has the kind of same cynical outlook, and he uses his tool and in his medium on Twitter to do all the the poking and making fun. That's his outlet. So I just think that's something to be for artists to be mindful of too.
Oh man, it's absolutely fertile ground, and it's almost. I mean, if you just spend a minute in it, it's kind of shooting fish in a barrel, because everyone who takes everything too seriously, which is both parties all the time,
Yep.
the only satirical ones that are good at this are libertarians, because they're not black pilled and they're not so dug into their party. I mean, they're dug into the libertarian party sometimes, but most of them are just they took in the clown pill, dude. It's fun and it's
Yep.
games, because they look at the whole political system like this entire thing's a joke. How do I not make fun of this? And so,
Yeah.
dude, I love it. That's perfect space for an artist to even. All right, let's be honest too. Like any good artist, there, like I get Thomas Kincaid sold a lot of paintings. He ain't moving culture.
He's not
Uh,
moving the needle. No.
no. And for an artist to be out there, but like, I sure would like to paint, a nice mountain, paint your landscape, paint your mountain. But do some, push the needle, make fun of somebody once in a while.
Yeah.
Or no, it didn't have to be somebody. Make fun of the system with your
Well,
art.
you could make the case that like any satanic artist on the left, like that, like a Marina Abramovich, you could argue, who's just as influential as her, Sam Hyde. I mean,
Yeah.
you could easily make that argument. And
Yep.
he's the one that also locally went to art school from Connecticut. Like the parallels are pretty hilarious.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
You guys are breeding something weird out there. Bunch of
It's
contrarians out there.
it must be the high fluoride or something. I don't know.
And the cold weather just pissing everybody off. The high fluoride. Yeah, man, I absolutely love this chat, dude. I really appreciate you coming on here. If anybody watching, listening, where can they, if they don't know where they're at, where can they find you? Where can they go?
Yeah, I got an Etsy shop, Alexander, California, and my Instagram is AB Ranniello. Check me out there. I'm running promotions all the time. I do a lot of local collaborations with local business as well, so I put my money where my mouth is too. Awesome. And just keep an eye out. I'm showing all the time. I do 20 to 25 shows a year. Do a lot of murals. I'm very proactive, so catch me on Instagram primarily.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. One more question. What was your favorite part of this interview? I'm just playing. I mean, you can answer that.
Yeah, no, I think just having a dialogue with someone who is an outsider, it really gives me a fresh balance to my artistic perspective, and it's always humbling, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, you are welcome. No, man, I definitely appreciate it. It was great. Again, I love talking to artists, especially someone in the libertarian movement. There's not a lot of us. I mean,
Nope.
I say that. I'm sure there are. They're just real quiet, and so we're gonna try to pull that out of them.
We have to out them.
Yeah, we got to out them for sure. For sure. I mean, it just makes the most sense to me. But all right, thanks, man. I appreciate it. You have a wonderful evening, and man, I'll see you out on those internet streets, and then maybe, because we're not too far, maybe I'll see you in maybe I'll see one of your murals in person.
Yeah,
Feel
I
like
got like
Ohio's good.
5 or 6 in Hartford. I mean, I got stuff down in Stanford. Yeah, I'm pretty much all over the state. I got stuff in Jersey, Pennsylvania. So you might see something.
Yeah, gotta get you out here to Albany. Could
I
use
know.
could
I
use
had
some
an
stuff out.
I had an ex from Albany. I really like that city though.
I love it. I love it, man.
Yeah.
It's a great city. I love Hartford too. They're one and the same. They're very. I mean, they're basically the same thing.
And
Just different
what's your
states.
podcast too?
Uh, my podcast is a Pardonable podcast, but I haven't done interviews in a hot minute. But yeah, if anybody watching, listening, if you want to, after you get done liking and subscribing to Libertarians Who Make Art, you can go over to Pardonable Podcast. Ton of interviews with artists and other people,
Yeah.
politics, live streams, stuff like that too, man. So
And
uh,
anybody out there that's part of the Union of the Wanted, major shout out to. I love you all.
yeah, I shout out to. I don't know a ton of that. Ton of them. I don't know anybody because I'm just as bad. I'm like I'm not super involved in a ton of different art groups. This is all I got. These libertarians who make this art.
That's great, man.
That's where I'm at. Thank you so much, man. You have a wonderful evening, and
You too, buddy.
I'll see you out there.
All right, rock on. Peace.
Later. Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to Libertarians Who Make Art. I appreciate you watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Go like and subscribe whatever you're watching or listening to this on. And go follow Alex and take a look at his art. And if you're an artist out there and you have libertarian leanings, even if you're not hardcore libertarian, there are no real libertarians. They're all fake libertarians. You can go to Libertarians Who Make Art and sign up. Or take a look, see what all the different artists are there. It's a great community. We're building it. It's a movement. Expanding beyond borders, which is pretty much what libertarians do anyway. They don't like them walls. So anyway, you guys could go to libertarianswhomakeart.com, sign up, take a look. Everything's there for you. And we will see you back here next time. Bye, guys.